tremendous disservice to the American people. Tremendous disservice.
The president singling out CNN and excoriating that network for, quote, hateful coverage. Bernie Goldberg will analyze that in just a few moments. On policy, the president says his administration is being damaged because people inside the U.S. intelligence agencies are leaking classified stuff.
I spoke to the president of Mexico, had a good call. All of a sudden, it's out for the world to see. It's supposed to be secret. It's supposed to be either confidential or classified in that case. Same thing with Australia. All of a sudden, people are finding out exactly what took place.
The president saying he will find out who the leakers are and they will be prosecuted. Also, Mr. Trump defended his administration, saying it's done more in a short period of time than anyone thought possible. He also pointed to a daily Rasmussen poll, which has his job approval rating today at 55%. Then he said the problems he's facing are worse than he thought.
To be honest, I inherited a mess. It's a mess. At home and abroad, a mess. Jobs are pouring out of the country. You see what's going on with all of the companies leaving our country, going to Mexico and other places. Low pay, low wages, mass instability overseas, no matter where you look. The Middle East, a disaster. North Korea, we'll take care of it, folks. We're going to take care of it all. I just want to let you know, I inherited a mess.
Now, it should be noted President Obama said the same thing when he took over for President Bush the Younger. The tone of the press conference was combative, yet the president was in command, didn't take any guff, and answered most of the questions directly. Here's why National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was fired.
The thing is, he didn't tell our vice president properly, and then he said he didn't remember. So either way, it wasn't very satisfactory to me. And I have somebody that I think will be outstanding for the position.
Looking forward, the president said he will have a new executive order on refugees by next week. He will have a revision of Obamacare ready by March. And he reiterated he doesn't believe anything he does will be covered fairly by many in the press. Joining us now from the White House, John Roberts, who questioned the president today. So he did not answer you when you asked him if he had read the transcript of General Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador. Were you able to get us any more information on that, John?
Bill, he did not answer me directly, only to say that from what he saw and what he heard, he believed that General Flynn had not acted improperly. So I did a little bit of digging this afternoon. I discovered that the president was, in fact, and you won't hear this anywhere else, Bill, this is exclusive information for you, the president was, in fact, fully briefed on the content of those conversations that General Michael Flynn had with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, by people who would know what the content of those phone conversations was, and that under repeated questioning during an investigation conducted by the White House counsel's office, General Flynn, I'm told, had a full recollection of what he talked about with the Russian ambassador. You'll remember that General Flynn had initially said that he didn't talk about sanctions. Then he said, well, maybe I don't remember. I'm not 100% sure. Well, he is 100% sure, and he told the White House counsel's office and other people who talked to him in those interviews as the counsel's office was conducting the investigation what he talked to the Russian ambassador about.
All right. No, I'm assuming that the White House counsel, what's his name again? Because
Don McGahn.
Okay. I'm assuming that he's the one that briefed Donald Trump about it. But there is a transcript available. I'm just wondering why the president didn't read it himself. Perhaps we'll learn that next week. But be that as it may, I thought that when he started off on the leakers, that this was a way to obscure if General Flynn had really done any damage to this country. You know, you just deflect into a different area. Did you see it that way?
I mean, certainly you can deflect. Let me just go back to what you said, and I'll just repeat that the president was fully briefed about the content of those conversations by people who would know what was said in those conversations, and we're not talking about the White House counsel. Now, back to your question, Bill. Obviously, you know, a lot of what the president did today in that press conference was deflect. When you go off on the media about negative stories and fake news, you're deflecting from what the issues of the day are. You're trying to change the narrative. The same thing with the leaks. This is not about what the National Security Advisor did, who he talked to, or what he said in those conversations. This is about the people who leaked classified information.
Yeah, that's a pretty serious subject. I mean,
it is a serious subject, which is why the president has reached out to the Department of Justice to launch a criminal investigation into who is behind this. Now, other presidents have launched investigations into leaks, and they've really gone nowhere. I mean, I think that you know, Scooter Libby is probably one of the only people who's been caught up in recent memory, at least, you know, saying things
Dick Cheney's chief of staff
somebody
about that crazy plane.
Exactly.
But let me ask you
again,
this.
it was not being truthful in an interview.
Do you know who taped Flynn? Who taped him?
Well, it would be the NSA.
Okay.
They went to a FISA court and they got a warrant for a wiretap, and it's the NSA that typically handles those things. And they collect the intelligence, they give it to the FBI.
Did Flynn?
Well, you know,
Flynn know he was being taped by NSA.
If you're talking to the Russian ambassador,
you should know.
You got to be pretty assured that you're going to be taped by somebody.
I said that.
Yeah.
But we don't know whether Flynn was told that he was being taped. We don't know that.
Well, they wouldn't tell him.
Okay. So, because this is fascinating. So Flynn makes the call. He should know, being a sophisticated guy who's in charge of the Defense Intelligence Agency, that the Russians are taping it for damn sure, and that the NSA is probably taping it because it's a call to the Russian ambassador. But they don't tell him, hey, we're taping this. So that then, if you look at the charges floating around, that Flynn lied to the FBI about what he said, that's the latest, and we'll get into that on this program a little bit later. Okay?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't stack up. If Flynn knew he was being taped, why would he lie to the FBI about it? I mean, that's a crime.
You would think that a person who had the sophisticated knowledge of electronic intercepts as he did and would, because he was the head of the DIA, would not lie to the FBI about the content of a telephone conversation. He had a pretty good assurance knowing that was being taped. So maybe there is, I don't know, I'm just giving somebody the benefit of the doubt that maybe there was something about this idea that initially he didn't recall what he talked about.
All of
that would seem to be a stretch.
All of that will come out, and we'll report it honestly, unlike some of the others. I'm going to hold John over for another minute. I'm going to debate Bernie Goldberg down the line here on whether the president was unhinged in the press conference. Did you see him as unhinged at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
And in fact, he made that point to say, people will say he's ranting and raving. He's not. He's having fun. And I thought, and I've talked to my colleagues about this, and they have agreed with me, that the president has a level of confidence in that sort of setting now that he never had before. And I think it's by virtue of the experience of going through the campaign, going through the election, the transition, and now being president of the United States. He has developed the confidence that he didn't have before.
And
he held court for an hour and 20 minutes, and I think knocked down a lot of the things that were thrown against him.
Yeah,
I think
and he's
as
the best
a president,
spokesman.
I think he did a good job of it.
He's the best spokesman for him. Is the CNN guys, are they mad? Or are they say, hey, well, this is bigger ratings for us because people tune in tonight? Are they mad?
Yeah, I talked to Jim Acosta, and he was quite happy that he got the amount of time that he did with President Trump in a very spirited back and forth. I think they both made their points, and I think they both came out of it okay.
All right, John. We appreciate your good work. Thank you. Next on the rundown, a Talking Points memo on how people in the press, as well as some working in the government, trying to sabotage the Trump administration. And later, as mentioned, the president lashing out at CNN, saying in the back segment tonight, the swamp fights back. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Donald Trump, largely elected president because he promised to reform Washington. Millions of Americans are fed up with intellectually dishonest politicians who are not looking out for them. Mr. Trump portrayed the nation's capital as a swamp.
I want the entire corrupt Washington establishment to hear the words we all are about to say. When we win tomorrow, we are going to drain the swamp.
But for every action, there is a reaction, and the law of unintended consequences is now hitting President Trump. That's because the swamp is inhabited by many different creatures, some of whom want to destroy the president. Right now, the national media despises Mr. Trump, as we have pointed out, and backed up with facts. Also, some folks working for the federal government want to damage the president. And that's why you're seeing the leaks from intelligence agencies and other federal bureaucracies. Now, all presidents have to deal with leaks. But in this political climate, the press gleefully gleefully accepts information from anonymous sources and spins it negative against Trump. As we pointed out last night, the public and press doesn't know what General Michael Flynn said to the Russian ambassador. We will know, but we don't now. Also, whether there's any truth to allegations that people working on the Trump campaign had meaningful contact with the Russian government, we don't know. Yet the press has run wild with the stories, and the Trump haters are relishing a witch hunt.
If there was dialogue and negotiations with the Russians, which is clearly against the law and clearly an act that cannot be pardoned, if the president knew while it was going on and did not stop it or in some way authorize it, that can be impeachable.
That's just bull. Not against the law for anyone to talk with any Russian. General Flynn had no power other than being a private citizen when the call with the Russian ambassador took place. In order for him to have committed a crime, he would have to formally attempt to undermine the Obama administration's Russian policy. So Sharpton's full of it, as always. Now, there is a report today that says General Flynn may have lied to the FBI, and we've mentioned that. If it's true, that is a crime. So we'll see. As Talking Points reported last night, there are two goals here. First, to link the Trump campaign to the Russian hackers who disrupted the Clinton campaign. And the second, to try to prove that President-elect Trump was undermining President Obama on Russian policy back in December. That's what the media goal is. That's what they want. Also, as we said last night, if there's truth to those allegations, they should be taken very seriously when the facts are presented. When President Trump first mentioned draining the swamp in Washington, I don't believe he understood how extensive the problem really is. After 8 years of President Obama, there are many people working in the federal government who like the former president and who despise Mr. Trump. Eliminating all of them and stopping the leaks, pretty much be impossible. Also, trying to get fairness out of the anti-Trump press is impossible as well. So the Trump administration has its hands full. And that's a memo. Now reaction, joining us from Stamford, Connecticut, former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, who worked under President Bush the Younger. So let's start with Mr. Trump scorching the press, and your former boss avoided that. What do you think?
Yeah. They're cut from different cloths, Bill. George W. Bush was a much more gracious insider establishment person. Donald Trump is the opposite. And in this sense, Donald Trump is the only person I know who's got the moxie to be able to take on the press like this. He's doing in public what a lot of Republicans I know talk about in private. Trump is actually delivering the smacks to the press that he thinks they deserve.
They're going to hit back, though, and but can it get any worse, Ari? I mean, you're an observer. Can it get any worse?
Well, you know, my attitude about this entire administration is let it play out. I am very open-minded about what Donald Trump can accomplish. But when it comes to the swamp, as you pointed out, Bill, if this was a Star Wars movie, headline would be the swamp strikes back. But the swamp is extraordinarily unpopular. Now, Donald Trump is not popular, but he's far more popular than the swamp. So he actually has the upper hand.
They can do things like leaks that can really damage the president. It already has damaged him. You know, it's embarrassing for his conversations with the Mexican president and the Australian prime minister to be, you know, made public within 24 hours. It looks like he has no control.
No question, and Donald Trump has a legitimate beef about that. But that's the agencies. That's not the press. The press is just publishing.
No, but that's what I said. It's a two-pronged swamp. They're creatures of all stripes in the swamp. All right? And the press and some intel people are after the president.
Unquestionably. But here's where the press is vulnerable. The press has brought so much of this on themselves, Bill. You know, a Gallup poll came out in September that said American people's trust in the press to tell the news accurately and fairly, which is their job, is at a historical all-time low.
And it should be.
And where the press is in really big trouble because only 14% of Republicans have faith in the press, only 30% of independents, and only 51% of Democrats. So to the degree that the press becomes increasingly oppositional to Donald Trump, it reinforces what Donald Trump and Steve Bannon are driving, which is that the press is an arm of the Democratic Party. And the more the press goes after Trump, the more that divide grows. They've already lost Republicans. They've lost 70% of the independents. The more they go after Trump, they're not going to get that back. The split deepens.
But I think they're going to go after him even harder now. I just think